Have you ever found yourself facing a decision that felt like looking over the edge of an abyss and decided to take the leap anyway? How did you decide what to do? In this video, I want to share 5 ideas that recently helped me make such a decision. I'm Jimmy. Welcome to my channel, Philosophy for Everyday Life. My goal on this channel is to help people looking for meaning pursue a more authentic life through the everyday practice of philosophy. I'm excited to share that I recently reached 1,000 subscribers, and I want to thank anyone who is returning to watch this video. In the coming weeks and months, I plan to begin putting out content more consistently and to develop some new offers. Before I talk about why I left my job, I'd also like to let you know that I recently opened a Substack account. In the coming months, I'm planning to develop more written content, to host seminars, and to create other materials on philosophy for everyday life. I don't yet have exclusive content on Substack, but for now, if you'd like to hear from me as soon as that content is available or to buy me a coffee, please head over to my Substack. Also, if you have ideas on seminars or courses you'd like to see offered here, please drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. So a few weeks ago, I left my position at a company where I had been working for almost 3 years. It wasn't necessarily a bad job or a bad company, but I had a growing feeling that I needed to take a step in a new direction. To explain why, let me share some of my story. I started this channel almost 5 years ago when I was working on a PhD in religion and ethics. I started the channel because I had some ideas that didn't fit directly with my academic work, but I wanted a place where I could try them out. YouTube seemed like a great option. I saw others putting out interesting material on YouTube, but I felt that I had some unique things to contribute, so I gave it a shot. I put out a series of videos over the course of about a year, and I had a great time doing so. Then I took a long hiatus from YouTube. During that time, I finished my PhD and a postdoctoral teaching fellowship. My plan was to take a job as a university professor in my field. However, for family and for personal reasons, I ended up leaving my academic career and pivoting to an entirely new industry. In order to stay in the academic world, I would have needed to bounce around to temporary positions for several years with low pay and little to no job security. I'm a divorced single parent, and I wanted to live somewhere I could build a home and a life for my children. So I left academia, and for almost 3 years, I worked in the renewable energy industry. After my long break from YouTube, I did another series last year called An Independent Scholar's Manifesto. In that series, I tried to make sense of my feeling that I still had a vocation as a scholar or an intellectual, even though I didn't have the type of job that people with that sense of vocation might typically have. Leaving the academy was for me something of an identity crisis. I spent about a decade training to be a professor. I taught at 2 different universities, I published papers, and I did well in grad school. All the things you're supposed to do if you want to find a good academic job. I worked really hard at it, and I was good at it. And as a side note, if you want to check out my published academic work, you can visit my page on academia.edu. It turns out I'm not the only one who's had this experience. There are others on YouTube, notably Sabine Hossenfelder and Jared Henderson, who seem to have left for similar reasons, and there are plenty of others who are not on YouTube who have had similar experiences. Writing and recording my Independent Scholar's Manifesto last year gave me a chance to reflect on the course of my life since I left academia. And although I'm grateful for the work I was doing in renewable energy, I realized I wanted to pursue something that felt more in line with my sense of personal vocation. I've had a growing feeling over the last year that I needed to move on to something new. The thing was, I didn't feel that I had the mental or emotional energy to figure out what that next thing was while I was still employed full-time and also parenting and taking care of the day-to-day things in my life. Part of what I felt I needed, honestly, was to push pause, to take a real break, and to give myself the opportunity to rest, to reflect, and to reorient myself at this juncture. But that felt scary. You're not supposed to quit your job without something else lined up first. What about the gap in my resume? What about running out of money? I had saved up enough money to last me for a period of time, but of course that's only a temporary solution. Sometime soon, I'll need to figure out a new way to make money. But I decided to take the leap anyway. Here's why. First of all, even though I am a fan of being financially savvy and strategic when possible, I also really like the idea of mini retirements spread throughout one's life, rather than waiting until the end of life to take a real break. I know I speak from a privileged position when I say this. Not everyone can afford to take a mini retirement, and there may be others who don't want to. But I saw that I had saved enough to take a real break, and this felt like something I badly needed. I got the idea of a mini retirement from Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek. Mini retirements aren't just about living in luxury. They're a way of recognizing that human energy and focus are finite and come in cycles. We can't be maximally productive all the time. If we indefinitely push ourselves as hard as we can go, we'll eventually damage our ability to work at peak productivity. Ferriss writes, "Alternating periods of activity and rest is necessary to survive, let alone thrive. Capacity, interest, and mental endurance all wax and wane. Plan accordingly. Aim to distribute mini retirements throughout life instead of hoarding the recovery and enjoyment for the fool's gold of retirement. By working only when you are most effective, life is both more productive and more enjoyable. It's the perfect example of having your cake and eating it too." What I take from Ferriss's idea of mini retirements is that we should give ourselves time to rest and recover when we can, so that we can go back to work with renewed focus and energy. The need for rest and the danger of not resting holds across all human activities. Another book I love is called Training for the New Alpinism. In one important passage about rest, the authors write, "Training makes you weaker, not stronger. It is during the recovery that you become stronger." If training makes us weaker and rest makes us stronger, it seems like giving ourselves time to step away from work and to rest deeply is essential for being able to work effectively over the long term. So this idea of a mini retirement is the first idea that made me think I should seriously consider leaving my job and exploring a new direction. But although I was intrigued by Ferriss's idea of a mini retirement, it wasn't enough to motivate me to take what felt like a leap into the abyss and to quit my job without a guaranteed next step. I needed something stronger to convince me that this particular leap was one I wanted to make. A second source that helped was introduced to me by a friend, the work of philosopher L.A. Paul, who has written a book called Transformative Experience. I won't get into all the details of Paul's book here, but her basic idea is that a transformative experience is one that, quote, teaches you something new, something that you could not have known before having the experience, while also changing you as a person. Because we can't know what we'll learn or who we'll become by choosing to undergo a transformative experience, we cannot use normal decision-making criteria when confronted with the option of such an experience. A transformative experience might not just lead to new and unexpected types of happiness or unhappiness. It can also change our feelings about what happiness actually involves. Because so much is unknown when deciding whether to choose a transformative experience, one decides whether to undergo a transformative experience based simply on, quote, whether you want to discover how your life will unfold given the new type of experience. Paul writes in her book, "You must choose to have or to avoid transformative experiences based largely on revelation. You decide whether you want to discover how your life will unfold given the new type of experience. If you choose to undergo a transformative experience and its outcomes, you choose the experience for the sake of discovery itself, even if this entails a future that involves stress, suffering, or pain." This idea of transformative experiences prompted me to ask whether I would rather find out who I would have to become in order to stay at my job, or who I would have to become in order to take the leap and try something new. After I thought about it, that question wasn't actually very difficult for me to answer. It was pretty clear to me that even if I failed, even if my life turned out to be more difficult in certain ways, I would rather find out what kind of person I would become by stepping away from my job and, for example, giving YouTube a serious try. Still, I found myself confronting this question with a great deal of fear. What helped me here was a very different quotation from a book called The Scottish Himalayan Expedition by W. H. Murray. Murray writes, "Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then Providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance, which no man could have dreamt would have come his way. I have learned a deep respect for one of Goethe's couplets. Whatever you can do, or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. What Murray prompted me to consider is that if I committed myself to a new direction, the path would slowly but surely open up before me. I didn't assume this meant it would be easy, but it did give me new courage to trust that I would find a way if I set out. Murray also convinced me that if I waited to take the first step until I knew where the journey would lead, I would never take that step. I needed to trust, as Goethe says, that boldness has genius, power, and magic in it, and that circumstances would respond to my decision to take action. A fourth idea that helped me is found in a tweet by the entrepreneur and investor Naval Ravikant. Ravikant's tweet says, "If you can't see yourself working with someone for life, don't work with them for a day." In an interview, Ravikant softens the idea a bit and says something like, if you can't imagine yourself working with someone for the next decade, you should begin extricating yourself from that relationship as soon as you can. Ravikant's tweet helped me see that even though I had learned a lot at the company I was working for, I could no longer see the potential for a long-term relationship there. I knew I was ready emotionally to move on to something new. And Ravikant helped me see that I shouldn't wait to take that step if I knew it was the step I would eventually take. Finally, I came across this quotation from the ancient Chinese Book of Changes, and this is my fifth idea. The passage reads, "The master, Confucius, said, 'To know the pivots, that is, the springs of opportunity, is divine indeed. The pivots are the first imperceptible beginning of movement, the first trace of good or bad fortune that shows itself. The superior man perceives the pivot and immediately acts. He does not wait, even for a day.'" I admit that I waited for more than a day as I was contemplating this decision. I also took the time to talk it over with several friends who I trust and whose opinions I respect. But I also could feel that internally and externally a pivot was taking place. This quotation convinced me that I should not delay action, but should move forward decisively to take advantage of the changes swirling about me. For the first time, I had the ability financially to step away from my job. I had the desire to do so, and I had some inkling of what I wanted to do next. So I took the leap. What about you? Have you faced similar decisions in your own life? And what resources have you found for navigating them? I'd love to know. Until next time, carpe diem.